Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm Legalese. I should be seeing what's going on on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today, where we'll be relaxing as per usual. Interesting. I was just looking at my phone, being like, what notifications do I have? And I was like, whoa, it's an event I probably put in ages ago, which I need to think about, but that's fine for now. Yeah, what was I going to say? It's the 1st of August. Welcome to theoretically summer. I don't know necessarily how hot it is where you are right now. Right now it's not particularly hot. In the UK, I think it's about 20 degrees outside. 20 degrees and cloudy, might I add, outside. So not very sunny. It looks like it's raining for the next few days as well, which honestly I'm not too fussed about. Ignoring like climate change and all that. But anyway, hello everyone. Right now in Fawnhollow at 6:18 p.m. on Tuesday, August 1st, 2023. Yeah, I do prefer summer months to be, warm but not too hot, but I understand I'm in the minority when it comes to that. I understand a lot of people, especially here in the UK, like, ooh, I like hot summer, but not like oppressively hot, and I'm not going to go on this tangent again and again and again, but, I do seem to bring it up every single summer where, essentially... Hold on a minute, I was just thinking, did I record an episode yesterday? I did record an episode yesterday, didn't I? I need to get back into recording YouTube videos again because the backlog has run out. Art Fight is almost over. I think it's over in about like a few minutes or something. I have literally zero backlog. I did record an episode yesterday, okay. For a second I thought I didn't, and I was just like, what? Mainly because we had so many letters in here, but of course it's just because it's the 1st of a month. We got a lot of letters from all the things which usually happen on the 1st. But yeah, I have no more backlog, so I got to be recording episodes today, tomorrow, and the day after. We'll see how that necessarily goes. Probably this weekend I'll be recording a lot more, I don't know, to build it up again. I genuinely don't remember where I am in like any of my games, so that's going to be an interesting thing to find out. But yeah, what did we talk about? I'm like really tired today. Didn't sleep particularly well last night, I would say. It's not really an interesting topic to talk about. What should we talk about? Let me think. Hold on. Hold your horses. Can I pluck out a conversation, a topic from anywhere? I mean, normally in these sort of times, I sort of delve down into the not bank holidays, what am I saying, the anecdote bank of my schooling year. I don't know why I'm speaking like this. My schooling years, where I have like anecdotes to share. But to be fair, nowadays, not nowadays, but like right now is summer vacation, I think, for in the UK. I think it's still about like a month left, because all I remember is basically that school starts again around the start of September, because my birthday was on, right at the beginning of September, so I always remember it like that. Sometimes, I come in on my birthday, but most of the time, actually, my birthday did actually land in the summer holidays, because my birthday is 2nd of September, if you don't know. It's right at the start of the academic year, but a lot of times the weeks don't line up like that, so only if like my day landed on the Monday or Tuesday or whatever, then I would actually be in school on my birthday. But anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk about. What am I here to talk about? I don't really know. I don't know. I still have Off-Book musical songs in my head. I watched another one of theirs. I watched Movie Night recently. Wasn't quite as catchy to me compared to the mock trial one, which both of them are on YouTube. One of them is unlisted, so you had to find it via a link on their website or something. But I think maybe that's just because of a recording quality in the Movie Night one. I was like, it's harder for me to hear exactly what's going on. But yeah, what can we talk about? I mean, Movie Night? It feels a bit weird talking about Movie Night, I suppose, and when I haven't really watched a movie recently. Why don't we talk about mock trials? I do remember back in school they used to... I've never actually partaken in any of these, so because they weren't really overlapping with my academic interests necessarily, but I remember there used to be things like... well, I don't know, is mock trial strictly like a US thing? Because I've not really heard of it in UK, but that might be because my school didn't offer law as like an option, and maybe we had to go to an actual secondary school which did law. But isn't it also maybe something about law you can only... I'm trying to remember. There's one of the subjects, maybe it was law, maybe it was economics, I can't remember, where basically the advice was it's better to start learning it in university than start it at A level, then do it in university, because you'll have to unlearn so many other concepts you learn at A level for university. It's something like that. I don't genuinely know how true that is. But yeah, I mean, like, law is, you know, obviously it's something very important in our everyday lives. I'm not going to understate the need for laws and, you know, fair representation and, you know, lawyers, I suppose, in general, to be able to represent these. Hold on, my, like, headphone wires are getting super tangled. What on earth is going on in our day-to-day life in a civilized society? But it's certainly not something which particularly is of much interest to me. And I'm sure part of it is due to exposure as well. I'm sure being exposed to something in a positive light from an earlier age probably leads to a greater inclination to like that particular topic, I suppose, in later years. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Maybe someone should run a double-blind experiment on that, but that's just kind of my own assumption. But it's like law in itself. It's both a fascinating but also quite an untameable beast at the same time. Like, as I say, I understand the need for laws and all of these sort of things, but also, like, so many laws are just born out of, like situation at the time. You know, they've not necessarily been updated. It's, you know, hard, I suppose, to keep laws always currently up to date. You know, but things like these legislations tend to be rather slow. As I imagine, I'm not an expert in law, mind you. Preface everything I say with the fact that, with the knowledge that I am not an expert in law. I've not even studied law. But it is rather necessary, I suppose, to, you know your, well, human civil rights and these sort of things. It's not really dawned on to me until now, but it's very strange that our school didn't offer it as a subject. Like, I don't even know if it was a subject in PSHE. You might be like, what's PSHE? PSHE is basically like the miscellaneous subject in UK schools. I don't know if it's just a UK thing, but it stands for Personal Social Health Education, which basically means it covers everything which is not covered in I guess I would liken it to real life skills, kind of. And if anything, you might be like, if it's real life skills, probably it should get more than 1 hour, maybe every single week. But basically, it would encompass things like, you know, things like sex education, things about, you know, like drugs and alcohol, and, you know, staying safe for those sort of things. You know, social relationship, like mental. Well, I mean, theoretically, mental health. I don't think our school ever covered mental health. It would cover things like taxes and like debt, etc., etc. I remember that some stuff it covered. But I don't remember it ever covering stuff like law, which it's a sort of thing where I'm just like, law is important for people to know, but also law is an untamable beast of complications and minutiae, which is far too dense for the layman person to really interact with. I mean, if there's any greater example of this, I think the fact that terms and conditions in front of any sort of program or software is something no one ever reads in full. And I don't know if it's necessarily obtusely designed to be obtuse in that sense, to be like, hey, you're not meant to like read all of this, we don't want you to read all of this. But it's also probably at the same time where it's like, okay, we have to do this because otherwise someone's going to come out with a technicality where XYZ happens, and then we're going to be like legally liable and have to pay like a large lawsuit. Or it's something where like the law has been written in the past because of the same situation happening before. And it's, I mean, I feel like law becomes tedium born out of necessity almost. Again, not an expert, but if you've ever like tried to play, well, okay, I mean, a very niche but more relatable thing is like if you ever try to create a game, and I mean like a board game or your own like made up game or something, you know how easy it is for people, if they want to try and break your game by you just not being specifying the rules enough. Like I've talked about this before. For one of my friends' birthdays, I collaborated with a couple of other friends to make a board game, and not a board, a tabletop game, I suppose. It's in retrospect, it was an overly complicated game. If I were to do it over again, I would take out like half the mechanics, because why did I put that many in? It was ridiculous. But in of itself, it's an interesting concept, I think. But like, it's so many ways to break the game just because of the way the rules, if you don't write them exactly perfectly as they should be, can be bent and broken, etc., etc. So then, you know, rules start compounding, being like, okay, you do this, except for this, except for this, except for this. And if, you know, perhaps in even more relatable example, if you ever played Dungeons and Dragons and you've seen how in-depth the rules can go and how overly overly, not nuanced, but I'm not sure controversial is the right word either, but people tend to argue and bicker over these rules, like, there's rules as intended, rules as written, etc., and how overly complicated these can be. You can imagine how applying that to a situation which has pretty low stakes at the end of the day. I don't think Dungeons and Dragons games really have much bearing on people's lives, apart from, of course, recreational escape. I'm not trying to diss on Dungeons and Dragons. I love Dungeons and Dragons and, tabletop roleplay. But apply that to, people's actual, livelihoods, their financial stability and, things like that, tied up with actual legal laws. I can imagine how that gets really complicated really quickly. Which is, I guess, kind of more bewildering than the fact that these sort of things aren't, there's not a Cliff Notes, a dumbed down version that was introduced to us during school time to actually learn about. Now, it could just be that our school was an exception. We just, didn't study law. Because obviously people become lawyers. You had to study law at some point. I can't imagine every single person just, started to join university and was like, hey, I'm going to study law without ever having any sort of, prerequisites. I don't know what necessarily is a prerequisite to study law at university. I would imagine, some combination of essay-esque subjects. Because I'd imagine being able to be, I'm not sure if eloquent is really the right word I want, but being able to be analytical and a good communicator is probably quite important for law. Yeah, it's just kind of bewildering, I suppose, that we're never really taught laws. But the closest I can think of is we were taught about human rights in PSHE once, and I don't even remember all of them off the top of my head. But I mean, to be fair, for layman terms, I feel like, one, they're very easily looked up. You can easily find them written out in plain English because they're kind of designed to be understandable by anyone because they need to be able to apply to anyone, right? But two, it's also most of them are just kind of along the lines of don't, let people kind of do what they want if it doesn't hurt other people. It's kind of the way it goes, that people have a right to be able to live a life, they have a right to basic resources and things like that. That's basically, TLDR. I probably covered how many of them are there? 32 or something. I probably covered a good 20 of them or something. But that is probably something I should know, or most humans should know, at least be kind of I'm not sure, okay, should you be able to recite all your human rights off the top of your head just like that? Okay, maybe not, people have to memorize a lot of things, and it's not, I mean, fortunately, I suppose it's rather a privileged position I'm talking from, but I don't often have to be faced with a situation where my human rights are challenged in that sort of sense. But I suppose being able to have a general understanding and intuition for what would be and what would be constituted as a human right is still probably a good thing to have. I don't know, I'm starting to think there's faults of our schooling system. I mean, I've gone on about it before. The schooling system is, flawed. It has some good parts, certainly, but it's not exactly perfect. But I'm also not someone who's overly involved in the schooling system, so is it really my place to say? I think it's, I've been through the system, I can share my opinion, but I also got to understand that I'm talking from a place of, a very one-sided story, and one which is very, very influenced by my own personal biases, right? Rather than one which feels like a proper representation of a majority of people's opinions. But things like human rights and law, it just kind of bewilders me that it wasn't even an option. I went to a rather traditional, I suppose, British school, is what I'd say. And under the constitution, under it constitutes as a grammar school, which I don't really know what the technical term is for grammar school. I looked it up before in a previous video. I cannot remember off the top of my head, but grammar school is is it equivalent of state school? I don't remember. It's basically, it's not a private school, so you don't have to pay money to attend there, but it's probably still I don't really know the difference. Now I think about it. The terminology is always very confusing to me. I sort of have an intuition of what a grammar school is, but I don't really know for certain. Anyway, it just kind of surprised me. Maybe law was an option, I just didn't take it. It might have been an option. I probably shouldn't be so accusatory, I suppose, to myself. I mean, I'm not really saying I'm being all that accusatory, but I probably shouldn't cast random aspersions when I don't really know if they're true or not. It might have been an option, because there were a few were a few subjects which became options, I suppose, at A level, but weren't at GCSE. Like economics was one of them. I think economics is the one where it's like you should start learning well, I don't know if it's necessarily during A level. Actually, the more I think about it, I think law was an option. But it's also the sort of thing with these subjects. Is the fact that the point of GCSE, I suppose, is meant to be like an introduction and step up to these A-level subjects, right? If you don't offer the subject as a GCSE, how are people ever going to get like introduced to these without having external interest in it already? Like, I'm trying to think from my own perspective. Imagine, actually, this probably isn't even more relevant. Computer science, very popular subject, something I interface with a lot, programming, data management, I suppose, and all that sort of thing. I know a decent amount about programming nowadays and, things related to data. But computer science wasn't a subject in our school. But imagine if it was like an A-level subject. We didn't have it as a GCSE either. How would I ever sort of be precluded to take these subjects in the first place if I didn't already have an external influence or desire to follow them in the first place? What I'm basically trying to say is, how do people get interested in law if they're never exposed to law, and that sort of thing? But replace law with, I suppose, any sort of topic. I'm a mathematician, I suppose. So maths is very overrepresented, I think, in the schooling system. No, I'm not saying that maths is bad. Like, I do think people should have a basic understanding of arithmetic, especially things like probability and statistics. Like, that should probably be the emphasized part of maths, if anything. And basic arithmetic is just kind of like a useful skill to have. Not necessarily that you need to be able to like multiply 4-digit numbers in your head or anything, but more like you should be able to understand what the concept of multiplication is. The same way that it's like with English literature, yeah, okay, do people need English literature to survive? No, but, I think people would certainly benefit from being able to develop a skill of reading comprehension, being able to understand, undertones or non-explicit themes, and that's that sort of thing. Like, I mean, if you ever see some really random hot takes, I suppose, of media properties, you like where you read it and you go, like, you've clearly missed, like, the entire point of his media property. So this is either Amelia or Vivian's. You might be like, yeah, okay, I feel like people should... It's helpful to get an understanding of basic, comprehension. But maths is certainly quite overrepresented. I don't know. I'm sort of losing my mind now. Was law an option? I genuinely don't remember. But if law... The only thing I think that makes law an option is the fact... I swear I remember someone saying... that if you want to study law, do it in university, don't do it during A-level, because the first thing they'll teach you is, like, unlearn everything you learn at A-level. Oh, yeah, I forgot to say, A-level is, like, the high standard of education pre-university in UK. So, it's, like, junior and senior year in high school, I think. Kind of. It's not actually what the year is called, it's just kind of like the subjects of the exam. It's the collective name of exams you take during those years. Someone has fleas. I can hear it. I don't really know where I was going with this, but I'm sure there was something I was going to say. Anyway, but the law, like, how many... I don't even know, like, obviously much about law in the first place, but, like, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. Is that like a plain English law book? Let's see. List of all UK laws. I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to go breaking laws anytime soon. I like to think most of the time I stay on the right side of the law. I don't plan to do any crimes or anything. But there's always the things about, like, how crazy some, like, random laws are out there. How there's, like, leftover laws from, like, when... like how mince pies are illegal or something, or like I'm trying to think of one, like you can't... I don't know, Tom Scott's done like a video about this. Isn't it like you can't fly a kite somewhere as well? I don't remember. I mean, there's almost certainly like, okay, legislation.gov.uk. Here's all the laws, I suppose. I don't even know how to navigate this to like understand what the laws are. Is that like simple English UK laws. Is that like a list of all the laws? Oh, list of all the laws in plain English. Maybe. Language or government and power of plain English. What? Layman terms law. Laws of UK. I don't know. Like, the thing I understand from lawyers is that a lot of it's reading, a lot of it's being able to sort of pass as legalese in the first place and being able to write things in legalese. I don't know if you've ever like read a contract before, but contracts go like crazy with like the confusing wording. It'd be so nice to be able to have, you know, the law, the contract, whatever, and then just like have a thing next to it be like, this is what it actually means. But of course you can't really do that because people are going to need, the reason is you kind of need this like solid definition here, because otherwise you can be like, oh, that's like not representative and that sort of thing. I don't know, people have probably thought about this much more than I have. Anyway, I don't really think I've discussed much in this episode, but somehow 20 minutes have passed. So I'm going to round this episode off here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Twitter, Discord down below. Hope we see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.